That's a good mixture. Evening, everyone. Sorry for the late start, but we're all in our places. Finish the sentence as you wish. It's my pleasure to call the March 17th regular meeting of the Louis Riel School Board of Trustees to order. We begin with a land acknowledgement this evening by Trustee Walker.
Sorry, just hold on. This is a personalized land acknowledgement of mine. I was born, work, and live on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Neenawak, and Dakota peoples on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. I also acknowledge that Manitoba is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Dene peoples. I recognize and honor Shoal Lake 40 First Nation as the source of my clean drinking water, as well as the treaty territories that generate and provide electricity powering my home, the school where I teach, and our school division. I respect the treaties made on this land and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and present. I dedicate myself as a parent, a teacher, and a school trustee to authentic alliances with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and cooperation. I further commit myself to helping the children in my care understand the importance of reconciliation.
Thank you very much. So I'll reiterate the welcome to those of you that are joining us in the room, and guests and a few trustees that are joining us online this evening. For those of you that have not been here before, an extra welcome. We do have a question period at the end of the meeting for anything that is on the agenda. We record the meeting to ensure that our minutes are accurate. And if you have requested in advance that you want to take a photo or a video of some portion of the meeting, great. But if you haven't made those arrangements in advance, we would ask that you not do so. In addition, if you do have questions after the fact and want to reach out, your trustees are accessible. info@lrsd.net is also your friend to ask questions, and we'll make sure that it is redirected to the folks that are in the best position to provide the information that you seek. Our vision is for all members of our community to excel as caring, confident, capable, and resilient lifelong learners who contribute to a democratic and sustainable world. And our mission is to provide a safe, inclusive, and engaging environment where personal and collective learning are valued and each one of us reaches our full potential. First thing we do is approve the agenda for the meeting, and I need a mover and seconder for that, please. Trustee Walker, second. Trustee Bjornson, all those in favor? Any
Trustee
opposed?
Kolachuk is in favor.
Okay. Yep, so trustees that are joining online, if you can't engage with the voting system, just verbal acknowledgement or the hands up emoji is fine. And that motion is carried, thank you. Approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 3rd were circulated in advance. I didn't receive any heads up that there were some errors or omissions, so we will accept those minutes distributed and archive them accordingly. And the same would apply to the approval of the minutes of the special board meeting, which was called to pass our budget and on March the 10th. News this evening from the Board of Trustees is being brought forward by myself. Three things that I would share happening in the community. The first one is congratulations to the cast and crew and everybody who supported the students at Collège Jean Sauvé during the recent run of Frozen. My understanding was that it was very much appreciated by the audience and all the students that had an opportunity to attend. Quality work always comes out of that, all our high schools, and I know that this one was a fan favorite. Last night I had the opportunity to attend the production of Mean Girls put on by the group at J.H. Bruns Collegiate. Again, some amazing singing and choreography and acting. The kids, it was opening night, the kids were having a blast. I'm not sure how they're going to sustain that for I think it's 8 shows over the course of the next 4 days, so they're all going to sleep well come Friday, but it was a lot of fun, and it was a sold out performance, and I suspect that's going to continue right through the week. And finally, a couple weeks ago, I had a chance to visit Highbury School, and there may be a photo that's attached to this one, I'm not sure. Trustees are invited to attend brief walkabouts and conversations as part of school visits. In this particular case, it was nice just to walk around the school and see what was happening. And of course, there's all the artwork on the walls. So I stopped at one point. It was a cloudy, cool day, and this whole hallway, where I think it was K-3 hallway, was just filled with lots of bright colored paintings and drawings. And so I had to snap a picture because I thought that might be the antidote for the day when it starts off so cold and cloudy. So thanks to those folks for a warm welcome, and to the folks that guided us around. It was nice. Here's some senior leadership this evening, provided by Assistant Superintendent Anderson.
Very good, thank you. I'd like to begin with École Audiovisuelle, who has launched a new Indigenous Perspective Student Committee. The creation of this committee marks an important step towards strengthening truth and reconciliation at the school and in the broader community. The student-led group will provide a space for learners to take initiative, amplify Indigenous voices, and guide meaningful projects that honor Indigenous histories, cultures, and perspectives. It's a chance for the age-based students to lead with purpose, compassion, and care. Students from 2 grade 6 classes at École Audiovisuelle have been visiting Action Marguerite, a long-term care home in the St. Boniface neighborhood. Through regular visits, shared activities, and meaningful conversations, students and residents have created a real sense of connection that bridges the generations. And the partnership has encouraged empathy, curiosity, and community spirit, giving students the chance to learn from the resident stories while offering compassion and joy in return. Just up the street at École Provencher, it's time for their skating program. For students in grades 2 to 4, they skate just kitty corner there at the Notre Dame Arena, about a block west from their school. For many of the students, it marks their very first experience on the ice. And it supports physical literacy, confidence, and inclusion, while also offering students access to a community activity they may not otherwise experience. It has been especially meaningful to watch students who have only recently arrived in Canada enjoying and appreciating the opportunity to engage in a winter activity. And Collège Béliveau and Windsor Park Collegiate collaborated just last week on a living library. For those that aren't familiar with the schools, they're very close together and have been collaborating frequently, reflecting on the theme of community. And they invited a variety of community members to participate as living books, sharing their stories with students. The living library featured 32 living books throughout the day, and a total of 119 students moved between the 2 school buildings, selecting the living books they were most interested in and engaging in meaningful conversations with them. And there were a lot of very effusive comments from both students and the living books. It was a project very much appreciated by all who engaged. Number of photos of the various folks that participated. And I'd like to wind up at Frontenac School. During the 2026 Winter Olympic Games in Milano Cortina, students across Canada have been cheering on our nation's athletes, and Frontenac School is no exception. Students joined in the excitement by participating in a fun-filled Olympic-themed afternoon that brought the spirit of the games to life. Phys ed teachers Patrick Peacock and Tyler Shade, along with the support of middle years student volunteers, over a dozen Olympic-inspired stations were set up, both indoors and outdoors. Students got to engage in activities like curling and luge in the large gym, biathlon style relay challenges outdoors, competitive bobsleigh events at hockey and snowboarding in the small gym. And Trustee Bjornson and I had the opportunity to witness hallway speed skating, which saw students using, I believe, plastic bags on their feet to slide down the hallway at great speed. So one of the members of the community, Mr. Casvia, reached out to CBC Kids and shared what was going on at Frontenac, and to the great delight of students and community there, it was featured on CBC Kids. So Frontenac made the big news nationwide. That's my brief trip around Collège Belleville and Windsor Park Collegiate Families with Schools.
That's great, thank you very much. 4 is presentations to the board. We begin with the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education, otherwise known as WIPCE, and I will turn to Superintendent Michelle for this one.
Well, I'm going to have Assistant Superintendent start us off and present the team that, along with Corey and myself, had the privilege of taking part in WIPCE 2025.
I'm just going to get the microphone hard. 1 second.
Okay, he's got a, I got you. Thanks.
Good evening, Chair and trustees, as well as community members. Thank you for the opportunity to share highlights from WIPCE 2025.
I'm so sorry. I just need to check. What the audience is seeing, not here, is not what's on the screen. I'm very sorry. That's my fault.
I'm flexible, Clark.
Very sorry. 1 second. There you go. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Clark.
No worries. Thank you, Clark, for doing that. We would like to share highlights from WIPCE 2025 and what we learned through the conference and our experiences in New Zealand. Tonight, we'll briefly situate what WIPCE is, why it matters to public education systems, and then share how the experience strengthened our understanding of Indigenous education, language revitalization, and reciprocal learning, along with what we are bringing back to strengthen our work in LRSD. We attended as a delegation, and you'll hear how this was both a learning opportunity and a responsibility to bring knowledge back into our system. To start, it's important to understand that WIPCE is a global movement, but its origins are here in Canada. The global movement began in Canada, and one of its founders is Dr. Verna Kirkness, a Manitoba educator whose work has shaped Indigenous education policy nationally. Her leadership helped establish the core values of WIPCE, community-centered learning, Indigenous governance, and education as a vehicle for cultural continuity and self-determination. Over the past 4 decades, WIPCE has traveled the world, hosted by Indigenous nations, each time deepening collective knowledge about how Indigenous education can strive within school systems. Our participation was not on the outside, it connected LRSD back to the origins of this movement while allowing us to learn how those original ideas have been strengthened and implemented internationally. WIPCE 2025 was truly global, bringing together delegates from 40+ countries. Canada had a strong presence, nearly 1,000 Canadian delegates representing close to 1/4 of the overall participation. This broad Canadian delegation included Indigenous educators, leaders, elders, and community representatives from across the country, reflecting Canada's foundational role in WIPCE, originating in Vancouver in 1987 and its ongoing leadership in Indigenous education globally. Our delegation approaches intentionally, not just as attendees, but as contributors and learners. Our delegation attended WIPCE with clear intention to connect with Indigenous educators and system leaders globally, to learn from Indigenous education systems operating at scale within public education, and to share LRSD's journey through presentations. And folks here will be introducing themselves as they come up, but each member of this delegation made a presentation at WIPCE, and in total, LRSD delivered 7 sessions / presentations across the conference. A key learning focus for us was Maori language revitalization, including examples of full immersion pathways beginning in early childhood and extending through secondary school, supported through long-term commitment and alignment across language, policy, funding, and community partnerships. What mattered most is this wasn't one-directional. The purpose of WIPCE is reciprocal exchange, sharing what we're learning in Manitoba while learning from Indigenous nations and education systems elsewhere. This slide captures why the investment has value because of its depth, transferability, and sustainability. We had direct visits and relationship opportunities with Indigenous schools and tribal communities. This was learning grounded in lived practice. A key design choice was capacity building, sending Indigenous teachers alongside senior administration so that the learning was shared, grounded, and immediately connected back to classrooms, schools, and system leadership. We also opened early conversations about long-term relationships that continue beyond the conference. One of which is exploring future cultural exchange opportunities and potential links to LRSD's international student program and the cultural exchanges. Overall, this strengthened our system's capacity to lead Indigenous education responsibly, grounded in Indigenous ways of knowing and informed by global practice. What this learning ultimately strengthened was our clarity of alignment. Oh, hang on a sec. I'm so sorry. Hang on. I had a dream about this once. We had direct visits and relationship opportunities with Indigenous schools and tribal communities. Through this, we strengthened our system's capacity. Clark, could you go to slide 6, please?
Forward or backwards? Or the
Yep. One back. Okay. What WIPCE reinforced for us is that the work we are already committed to in LRSD is deeply aligned with global Indigenous education practice and our own strategic framework. Could you go to that table, Clark?
You bet.
Thank you. Across the table, you'll see clear connections between MYSP strategic actions, the Reconciliation Commission calls to action, and Mama Twiswin as our learning framework. For example, learning from Maori community-governed education models reinforced our direction around community schools as relational hubs, where schools are not just service sites, but centers of belonging and responsibility. Seeing full immersion language nests operating at scale validated our continued investment in language pathways as foundational to identity, well-being, and student success. This directly connects with both TRC calls to action related to language revitalization and our own strategic exit and our own, there we go, and our own strategic actions. Our learning also strengthened our approach to Indigenous perspectives in curriculum, particularly the importance of storytelling, land-based learning, and truth-telling as core pedagogical practices, not as add-ons. Finally, WIPCE deepened our understanding of Indigenous leadership rights and sustainability, reinforcing why education systems have a responsibility to support long-term intergenerational pathways rather than short-term initiatives. The key message is this: WIPCE did not redirect our work, it affirmed it. It gave us confidence that our MYSP commitments are well aligned with Indigenous systems that are thriving globally and grounded in relationships, language, land, and responsibility. Next slide, please. One of the most powerful moments of WIPCE 2025 was the Parade of Nations, where Indigenous peoples from over 40 countries gathered and moved together through the heart of Auckland to open the conference. And if you see the picture there, that is Queen Street, downtown Auckland, and it was shut down for this event. Delegates wore traditional regalia, textiles, and cultural dress, proudly representing their nations, languages, and ancestral homelands. The parade was visible and a moving expression of indigeneity, resilience, and cultural continuity. Walking alongside Indigenous educators and leaders from around the world made it clear that while our nations are distinct, we share common responsibilities, protecting language, culture, land, and future generations through education. The parade was not a performance. It was a collective declaration of pride, presence, and survival. Grounded in Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination, it set a tone for the entire conference. For our delegation, the Parade of Nations reinforced why Indigenous education matters so deeply. Students thrive when their identities are honored, their cultures are visible, and their communities are respected, a message that directly connects to our work in LRSD. Just a little snippet. Just to give you a little sense of what it felt to be there, what it felt to be introduced as a Canadian delegation with folks from Northern Manitoba, folks from Winnipeg, folks from all over, and joining the Canadian delegation was literally coast to coast. It was truly an international experience that also provided us opportunities for connections with other Canadians and Canadian school divisions and educators and leaders. This slide captures the heart of our experience: reciprocal learning and knowledge exchange. We went to learn, and we also went with a responsibility to contribute, sharing LRSD's work and building relationships that extend beyond a single event. The key takeaway is that, is that meaningful system learning happens through relationships, through observing practice, hearing stories directly from Indigenous educators and communities, and reflecting on what it means for our own context and commitments. This is the frame we carried forward in our presentation and into what we're bringing back to LRSD. With that context, we'll now be moving into the next section, and that is what we presented, what we learned, and what we're bringing back to our work. This slide captures the heart of our experience, and our experience truly was about reciprocity, about learning, and about sharing experiences. We were very intentional about attending not just as observers, but as contributors. And so Christian and I shared about Manitoba, a key and Anishinaabe Minecraft world developed through LRSD in partnership with Minecraft and guided by elders and knowledge keepers. What made this especially powerful was seeing how Maori educators and a school division in BC have also created Indigenous worlds rooted in their own nations. Sharing these digital spaces with educators around the world can reinforce how Indigenous-led innovation can honor culture, language, and identity while opening new possibilities for learning. With that context, we'll now move into the next part of our presentation, and each delegate will begin by presenting their name and their role within the school division, a little bit about what they shared, what they learned, and what they are bringing back to our work in LRSD.
Bonjour, Amin, Kakanawea, Kelsey Lenahan, Indigenous Cause, Papasain, Indigenous. My name is Kelsey Lenahan, and my spirit name is Papasain, which means woodpecker. I'm from Penamintang First Nation, and I'm grateful to be here tonight to share about our time in New Zealand. So why being asked to present was significant? So presenters are invited and abstracts end up undergoing rigorous academic and Indigenous review, ensuring that only high quality and culturally grounded work is shared. It was also a requirement for all lead presenters to be Indigenous. Accepted abstracts represent Indigenous education systems and language revitalization from communities worldwide, creating global knowledge exchange. So our work sat alongside international leaders, including established programs, university partnerships, and government-supported initiatives. Recognition validates LRSD's commitment to Indigenous language education and positions us as contributors to global conversations. I'm sorry, I forgot to say ahead of time who I am in the division, but I am the Vice Principal of Indigenous Education, and I have the privilege and opportunity to work with the Indigenous language team. So I was teaching Anishinaabe-Moan for several years with the Indigenous language team. So having the opportunity to work with immersion schools and to learn about the Maori language was very significant. Yeah.
Danse, Courtney Pranto, Nitisanigasan, Ekwa Sawe Penasisquel, Pascua Creation of Chinina. So my name is Courtney Pranto. Oh, so my husband that. And my spirit name is Yellow Thunderbird. I'm originally from the Pascua Cree Nation, and I am a Cree language teacher with the Indigenous language exposure program. So as we were saying, presenting at WIPCE was a huge honor, and it was an honor to share about the Indigenous language exposure program that we are very proud of. During our presentation, we highlighted that the program creates meaningful opportunities for students to learn an Indigenous language as part of their regular school experience. When we talked about the structure of the program, part of our focus was on our two key foundations. First, it's universal. Every K-2 student receives Indigenous language exposure. This creates consistency and ensures that Indigenous language learning is embedded into early education across the division. Second, the program is community grounded. This means the work is guided by elders and community voices. Their guidance shape how we approach language, how we honor cultural protocols, and how we ensure the learning remains authentic and respectful in every classroom. When we spoke of the growth of the program, the Indigenous language, we then spoke of the growth of the program. The Indigenous language exposure program began several years ago teaching Anishinaabe-Moan. Our expansion now includes Inanimoan and Michif, reflecting on the languages and cultures present in our region and honoring the treaty relationships connected to this land. Expanding to multiple languages allows us to better represent the linguistic diversity of Indigenous communities that our students belong to and learn from. Finally, we showed how this program serves as a model for how school divisions can implement Indigenous language education on a larger scale while still maintaining cultural integrity, community connection, and proper protocols.
So global networks and relationships developed. We established ongoing collaborations and knowledge exchange networks extending beyond the conference, learning and mutual support. We gained access to global best practices in language revitalization through presentations with educators operating successful immersion programs. So at the conference, there were a ton of different sessions that we could attend. And because language is my passion, I attended several of them around language revitalization and immersion. And a few of those were from people from Australia, where Aboriginal people were sharing some of the initiatives that they have done to revitalize language. And it also provided an opportunity to ask a lot of questions and to learn how they started. And so it also established connections with university-based researchers in Indigenous education with the intention of exploring future collaboration. The previous photo, Courtney is holding a turtle calendar. So the Indigenous language program is based off of the 13 moons on the back. Each of those scoots on there represents one of the moons. And our units are designed to follow what's happening on the land, what our people would be doing traditionally, and what the animals are doing traditionally. So at the end of our PowerPoint, end of our presentation, I brought that turtle calendar out. And you can also see we have a little kukum puppet in the corner. So we actually brought a lot of the resources that we've had made from scratch, because there aren't a lot of resources that are available when it comes to Indigenous languages. We have to create them. So we traveled with this kukum puppet in my suitcase. And so that turtle calendar, I laid it out on the ground outside of the presentation. And as I started to roll it up, somebody came by and said, "What is that?" And then they brought over a group of people, and I was on the floor putting it together and had a crowd around me. And so I started to share about those turtle teachings with them. And then in the end, I ended up gifting them the turtle poster so that they could take home. And they were from Alberta, from Treaty 6 territory, and they actually gifted us their Treaty 6 flag that they marched with in the nations. We had never met before, and so just to have that opportunity, that natural exchange that took place, we built relationships with each other, we exchanged information. And one of the people that I had the opportunity to meet was Dr. Grant Bruno, who is doing a lot of research on how to decolonize neurodiversity. And so just to have that ability to learn about the research that he's doing, the traveling that he was doing there, and to be able to continue having conversations was such a rich experience for me. This picture with this kukum over here, she walked by, she saw the kukum puppet, and then we realized that the kukum puppet had a kukum scarf and she had a kukum scarf on. And so we just stopped everything to snap that photo. And so it was somebody that we gifted that turtle poster to. And so while we had the opportunity to present on the global stage, we also had the opportunity to build relationships from all across Canada and from other parts of the globe as well.
Great. So what we learned. In the 1970s and early 80s, the Maori people, the Maori language was at a crisis point. It was a very real risk that the language would disappear within a generation. And the community recognized the need to take action. This sparked the creation of Kahanga Rio, or language nests, which are early childhood immersion programs where children are surrounded by fluent speakers. This movement was led by the community itself, families, elders, and grassroots organizers guided the direction and protected the integrity of the language. From this journey, 3 lessons stood out to us. First, creating safe, immersive spaces in early years makes tremendous difference. Children learn naturally when they hear or use the language every day. Second, when revitalization is shaped by families and communities, it becomes stronger and more authentic and more sustainable. And third, language and identity support one another. Revitalizing a language strengthens cultural belonging, connection to ancestors, and overall well-being of the community. These lessons gave us a clear picture of what meaningful Indigenous language revitalization could look like in LRSD and how we can continue learning from models that honor both language and community. What are we bringing back to LRC? Language nests are a powerful model for revitalizing languages, especially those at risk. What we saw firsthand showed how early years immersion can truly restore language vitality and strengthen cultural identity from the very beginning. We also learned that revitalization works best when it's community-led, when families guide the language journey and learning becomes more meaningful, authentic, and sustainable. These insights strongly connect to LRSD's priorities and reinforce our commitment to Indigenous language education. They remind us how essential family and community involvement really is. Our important takeaway was the value of global Indigenous relationships. The connections we formed create opportunities for shared learning, collaboration, and support with other communities doing inspiring work. So while we were visiting the language nest, I was taken back of how emotional it was for me as students performed their language through song and haka. It was so inspirational. This experience was so powerful. You could see and feel the pride of the students as they were immersed in their language and culture. This brought me to tears. I'm a Cree woman and a language teacher. This experience also reminded me that I am also a learner, and I am on my own journey of reclaiming my language and culture. This visit has impacted me and has further deepened my passion to and commitment to Indigenous language education.
So that video is as we were walking up to the nest, and it was ceremony that was taking place. So there was somebody in front of us leading us in, singing to the students, and the students were singing back and welcoming us in. And as we started to walk through them and walk into the language nest, I thought I could feel the ground vibrating. It was so powerful to hear all of their voices and to just see that passion that that they demonstrated. And so as we walked in, the next picture is the inside of the language nest, and the students gathered again to share with us. One of the powerful things for me as well is as I was walking in, unfortunately it's not in the photo, but off to the side, there was a 1-year-old in a stroller. And while that 1-year-old was in the stroller, they were also doing haka with the older kids and watching them. To me, that was so powerful to see at such a young age that that little child was thinking, I got to keep up with these guys, right? And so he was practicing and he was learning and hearing the language. And the beautiful thing about this too is after the students had left and they headed back to continue learning about language, we were able to sit down with the founders and the people that had started the language nest there. And one of the people that had attended, that was speaking with us, was also a student. It was his mom that had started it there. And then he got to be a student that went through it. And so to just be able to ask questions of like, how can we start? What can we do? They explained that they're bringing in their elders and their language protectors, and they are literally sitting right in front of the babies, and they are speaking the language fluently to them every single day. And so for that 1-year-old to hear the language spoken, they didn't think twice about joining in and doing the haka with everybody else. And so having the opportunity to sit down and to learn from people that have started it was profound for thinking about what we can do here as well. You want to do the next slide? Thank you. So bringing global Indigenous knowledge home to advance our strategic plan. So LRSD contributed to global Indigenous education conversation by sharing our Universal Indigenous Language Exposure Program and demonstrating how school divisions can implement language education. We learned from Indigenous education systems operating at scale, including established immersion pathways, government-supported language initiatives, and multi-generational revitalizing success stories. The experience directly informs and strengthens our work in LRSD by validating our current direction and providing concrete examples of what successful language revitalization looks like over decades. This was both a learning opportunity and a responsibility to bring knowledge back to our community to continue advancing Indigenous language education and meaningful partnership with families and elders. In our multi-year strategic plan 1.4, we talk about strengthening Indigenous language education by implementing a language nest program in our family centers. So being able to attend a language nest, where language nests originated from and where they first started, and to listen to people who have gone through them about how they started from the ground up was very powerful to learn. And while we may not be as advanced as the Maori people are just yet, visiting a language nest and learning in the very place it originated from is an enriching learning experience that will continue to guide the work that's happening within our MYSD. Next slide.
Just an aside, the Maori students who participate in school this way are 19 percentage points higher in graduation rates compared to Maori students who are attending school otherwise.
Good evening. Nagane Wabishke Mayinga Equate Indigenous Cause, Waseg Bakanduki, Dudam. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rose Bird. I am a member of the education team, and I also teach a high school language and culture class currently at Glenlawn. Thank you for the opportunity to share some reflections to my visit to Western Springs College, known as Napuna Waiorea in Auckland. So Western Springs College is a high-performing public secondary school serving students in years 9 through 13, with about 1,800 students. It is widely recognized as one of the top state secondary schools in Auckland, graduation rates that often exceed 90%. But what makes this school particularly unique is the way it has intentionally designed its education model to honor Indigenous identity and learning. The school operates using what they call a waka horua, or double-hulled canoe model. In this structure, Western Springs College works alongside Napuna Naorea, a Maori immersion kura. The two learning streams exist side by side, one English medium and one Maori immersion, moving forward together toward the same goal of student success. The symbolism of the double-hulled canoe is powerful. Each side maintains its own identity and strength, but both work together in balance. This concept strongly reminded me of our own teachings here in Canada, particularly the two-row wampum belt. The wampum represents two vessels traveling side by side down the river, one Indigenous and one European, each with its own ways of knowing, governing, and being, neither interfering with the other,
but both moving forward in mutual respect. In many ways, the Waka Orura reflects the same principle. It shows that we do not need to choose between Indigenous and Western ways of learning. Both can exist together, each strong in its own identity, while supporting one another toward a shared future. For Maori students, this means their language, culture, and worldview are not treated as an addition to education. They are part of the foundation of the school. During my visit, it was clear that the Maori identity is embedded throughout the environment. Te Reo Maori, the Maori language, is visible and spoken across the campus. Cultural carvings, artwork, and symbols are integrated into the school space. Students participate in welcoming ceremonies and cultural leadership that reinforces pride and belonging. What stood out most to me was a sense of confidence and identity among Maori students. They were not navigating between school and culture as separate worlds. Their culture was respected and supported within the learning environment itself. The physical design of the school also reflects a commitment to innovation and collaboration. Western Springs recently completed the largest secondary school rebuild in New Zealand's history, replacing traditional classrooms with open 3-story learning hubs designed to encourage teamwork, creativity, and stronger relationships between students and teachers. The school community is guided by values of fairness, diversity, creativity, and sustainability. Students have opportunities to excel not only academically, but also through arts, performing arts, and athletics, with programs that engage students in over 25 different sports. What Western Springs College demonstrates very clearly is that supporting Indigenous language and identity does not compete with academic success, it strengthens it. As educators working here on Treaty 1 territory, this is an important lesson. The Waka Hurua model shows what is possible when Indigenous education is built into the structure of a school rather than being added later as a program. A model like this has the potential to strengthen belonging, increase engagement, and support long-term success for Indigenous students here in Winnipeg. When Indigenous students thrive, the entire school community benefits. One of the biggest reflections I brought home is this: when a school truly honors the identity of its Indigenous students, those students walk taller in their hallways, speak with greater confidence, and see a future where they belong. And as for me, as an Indigenous educator here in Manitoba, this experience was more than professional learning. It was deeply personal. It reminded me of what is possible when Indigenous students are truly seen, supported, and valued in our schools. I return with a renewed sense of responsibility and hope to continue this work in a way that honors our students, our communities, and the future we are helping to shape here together on Treaty 1 territory. The school was phenomenal. I was also greeted when I got there with a ceremony. It is very emotional. I'm not a crier, but every time I witnessed the haka, tears would fall out of my face. I didn't ask for it. So it was really, it was a profound life-changing experience for me. In addition to visiting schools and learning from other Maori educators, as well as educators from across the world, I also had the opportunity to contribute to the conference by facilitating a workshop. The session was called Circle in the Box, originally created by Jan Derrick and adapted by our team to reflect our context here on Treaty 1 territory. The workshop explored the differences between Indigenous and Western worldviews and how these perspectives influence the way we understand relationships, knowledge, and education systems. The session was very well attended, standing room only, with educators participating from many parts of the world. What made the conversation particularly meaningful was how many connections participants made Maori experiences and Indigenous experiences here in Canada and the work happening in their own regions. Educators shared reflections, asked thoughtful questions, and engaged in dialogue about how schools can better support Indigenous students while honoring knowledge. For me, this was a powerful reminder that the work that we are doing here in Manitoba resonates far beyond our own region. The approaches our division is developing around Indigenous education and worldview are part of a much larger global conversation. While we are learning from Maori educators and schools like Western Springs College, we are also able to share the work happening on Treaty territory. One of the most important outcomes of this experience is that it strengthened international connections and affirmed that the work being done here in our division contributes to a global effort to improve Indigenous education and student success. As for me, an Indigenous educator, this experience highlighted how deeply connected this work is across the world. Despite the distance between New Zealand and Treaty 1 territory, the shared goals of identity, belonging, and student success remain the same. It reinforced that we are not working in isolation, but as part of a broader collective effort to support Indigenous learners. One of my biggest reflections I brought home from Aotearoa, New Zealand, is this: when a school truly honors the identity of its Indigenous students, those students, as I said earlier, walk taller in their hallways, speak with greater confidence, and see a future where they belong. When Indigenous students succeed, we all move forward together. This experience was more than professional learning. As I said, it was deeply personal. And as I said, it was really life-changing for me. And I am glad that I got the honor to participate. Miigwech.
Hello, my name is Veronique Reynolds. I'm on the Indigenous education team as a teacher. I'm also Red River Métis, Francophone, Franco-Manitobain, very proud of being from Winnipeg and Manitoba. And so, as Rose mentioned, we had the opportunity to co-present two of our presentations. Our abstracts were selected and we were very honored to have that opportunity. So I'll be speaking about our second presentation, which was belonging and reconciliation, Indigenous education in LRSD. So within this presentation, we talked about our IYL, our Indigenous leadership, our Indigenous community programming, LRSD's graduation powwow, and LRSD's powwow club. The following slide is one of the slides from our presentation that had some testimonies from community. I asked parents from our parent programming, but also caregivers, community members that participated in Powwow Club and IYL to give us some feedback about how they feel these programs have shaped their children, their families, their communities. And so this is some of the feedback this is just a little bit of the feedback that we received. And what was really powerful while we were sharing, as Rose mentioned, there was a lot of engagement. We were not expecting to be presenting to like a full room. We were like, maybe there'll be 5 people there, but we were presenting to a large crowd, people standing in the back. People were very interested and engaged and wondering how they could implement similar programming in their schools, in their school divisions, districts all over the world. And one of the most powerful interactions happened at the very end of this presentation. Somebody asked us, how do we ensure that the work that we are doing in LRSD continues? And we said that that can only happen if we continue to build relationships with community members, caregivers. If we are just relying on divisional funds, that's easy to lose. But if we have an engaged population that is willing to fight for that programming and willing to show how that programming really has an important impact on people, especially students and families, that is how we can ensure that programming continues and that still has an impact in our division. And so all of this programming, Indigenous youth leadership, has been successful because of years of community engagement and connecting with community, building relationships, consultation, making sure that the needs of community are met with the needs of the education system. So it's really I believe, the system from within. We can move on to the next slide. And so the other part of our work, as you noticed, probably we spent a lot of time in community during our time in New Zealand. And one of the things that Corey requested of me was that I do a little bit of research and try to connect with community organizations before we left for New Zealand. And so as I was doing that work, one of the communities that I really wanted to connect with was the host community, which was Ngati Fatua Orake. And so they are the host tribe. They were the iwi. Iwi is the word for tribe. And they were the host tribe. And so I was able to connect with 2 different organizations to be able to have experience on the ground, lived experience with these community members. And so this is a slide directly from the WIPCE website that explains the impact of this host community on the conference. The following slide is a cultural center that we were able to attend that is right in the center of Auckland, so CBD, Central Business District, and it's called Te Wharekura. And at Te Wharekura, we were able to spend time very briefly with Sarah Ann, but I spoke to her on the phone and through email quite a bit. She was kind of the administrative help to set up this experience. And then Prince, the knowledge keeper, and his nephew Cassius, who is 17 old. And so they walked us through a guided tour of Auckland, and Auckland CBD is their ancestral land. And they were displaced, their iwi was displaced from that land by the British Crown. And so they were able to tell us the history of that displacement and that also the reclamation of that land. And so now their iwi, the Orokai, actually they're one of the largest landowners of land in the CBD area of Auckland, which has given them incredible sovereignty, economic power. They've been able to build their own healthcare system. They've been able to build their own education system through these treaty settlements. And so we were able to learn about that. We were able to laugh with them. It was amazing elder and mentee relationship that Cassius was able to develop with Prince, his uncle. And at one point near the end of our tour, our guided visit, Prince told me, he's like, I've never seen Cassius speak this much at any of our tours. He usually doesn't say anything. He's really just there to be his helper. That's how he was introduced at the beginning of the visit. And he said, I think he just felt so at ease with all of you. He just felt like he could really connect to all of you. And we were all laughing. At one point we were climbing trees. I don't know if you can see there's this really large, beautiful tree in this park. Prince is just standing against it, so it was very easy for us to climb. So we had this beautiful moment. We were climbing trees, we were sharing language, we were sharing stories. It was truly something that I don't think, I don't want to be like selfish, but I don't think anyone else could have experienced that. So maybe our group in that moment, it was that connection of just being able to really relate to each other as Indigenous peoples, but also we are so used to working with teenagers because we're all teachers that I think Cassius also just felt so at ease to be able to be himself. And so that was a really beautiful moment for me to be able to see that and for Prince to have shared that with us as well. So the following slide is when we were able to actually visit the village of Orokai, so where Prince Cassius where their iwi is originally from. So they were displaced from central Auckland to this area outside of Auckland, which is, of course, as Auckland grew, very it seems very close to Auckland, but it is still like 15-minute drive away. And so through that guided walk and that visit to that village where people actually live there, we were guided by Dane Mahai, who is also related to Prince and Cassius. And so it was close to Okahu Bay. And he talked to us about the migration, having to leave, being displaced, the occupation of that land, the continued attempts to occupation. So you can see there's a lot of green space there. He explained to us in the 1970s, the government of New Zealand was trying to take that land. So they had been displaced to this land, and then the government was trying to take the land where they were displaced once again to be able to build these very profitable suburbs because it's right on the bay. So this is waterfront property. So instead, the village resisted against that occupation, and they were able to keep their land. And instead of building upon that land, they actually kept that space as a community space that it's open to the public. Anyone can visit that space. And I just think, like, what a beautiful example of thinking of others before thinking of yourself. And they were doing the exact opposite of what the government of New Zealand wanted to do, right? They were thinking of in a very collective way instead of a very selfish way. And so through that visit with Dane, we were able to learn about the living village, the housing that they offer to the people of that village, the marae, which is like their community hub. We were also able to learn about the economic sovereignty through their land settlement claims and their continued resistance against displacement by initially the British Crown, but then also by the New Zealand government. It was an incredibly powerful visit to this place. And so on the following slide, I'll just talk about my final experience. So this was where I was able to actually take a voyage on a waka. So waka Haurua, which is a two-hulled waka. So there's two wakas that were there, the Hanumi waka and the Hokulea waka. And the Hokulea waka, it was very special. I had been following they left Hawaii actually and came to New Zealand, voyaged using traditional navigation wayfaring techniques. And so I had been following their voyage online. And the significance of the Hokulea waka is that it was the first waka that had been built in over 600 years, because that type of navigation had been suppressed by colonial nations. And so in the 1970s, similar to the language, the Polynesian people, the people of the South Pacific, felt that they were going to lose this ancestral knowledge if they didn't do something about it. And so through connecting with elders and knowledge keepers, especially elders, they were able to rebuild a waka in a traditional way and also navigate that waka from Hawaii all the way to New Zealand using ancient wayfinding techniques, celestial navigation techniques. And so the waka that I was able to go on was the Haunui, sorry. And it was an incredible experience because there was navigators from the original Hokulea voyage on that canoe, and we were able to sit like just beside them and to see the respect and reverence the crew of the Haunui had for the Hokulea. It's like something I cannot even describe to people. It was just amazing. Like they were crying, we were all crying because it was so impactful to have these knowledge keepers there to be able to experience this this resurgence of cultural knowledge. And so there's this quote on their website that says, "The footsteps laid down by our ancestors create the paving stones upon." And I think that is such a beautiful message for all of us to keep in mind as we're working in education. So my final slide is just the lasting impact. And so while I was in New Zealand, I was thinking about two kind of foundational documents in Manitoba education. And so there is the Mama Tuiswin document, which is the wonder we are born with, which is the Manitoba Framework for Indigenous Students. And then there's also a slightly newer, the Mino-Pima-Tisiwin teaching that is kind of foundational to the new framework for learning in Manitoba. So that teaching is grounded in every curriculum that is being created in Manitoba at the moment. And Mino-Pima-Tisiwin means the good life. So it means that we have to have students that have hope, belonging, meaning, purpose, have a voice, feel safe and supported, are prepared for their individual paths, have capacity to play an active role in shaping their own future. And this is for all students, not just Indigenous students. Live in relationships with others in the natural world and honor and respect Indigenous ways of knowing and being and doing with a commitment to and understanding truth and reconciliation. And so all of the experiences, and we've only highlighted a few, but all of the experiences that we were able to either lead or engage with, I felt really led towards that work of like reaffirming that idea that every student should be able to live the good life and should be living this teaching fully. And so for me, the next steps are clear. We need to continue strengthening Indigenous relationships, community-led partnerships, culturally grounded programming, Indigenous language pathways across LRSD. The work that is being done around the world, in some ways, we feel like we're small here in Manitoba, but we have a big impact, and we are ahead in some ways and we are behind in some ways. So it's important to keep fighting towards a better future for all of our students and working towards better partnerships. So thank you.
Hi folks, my name is Shelley Hopper. I know many of you in previous roles and as a principal of elementary and high schools until about a year and a half ago when I was seconded into the role of anti-racist education professional learning collaboration coordinator. I have been in that position for just over a year and a half, continuing to work with Louis until the end of June this year. So I want to begin by offering deep thanks to Lindy Henderson and Morningstar Tom from Treaty 3 territory, who were instrumental in connecting us to the phenomenal learning experiences of school visits they were to embark on while we were in New Zealand. Lindy and I completed our doctoral research together late last year, and my focus was on building Indigenous capacity, and hers was on land-based learning and education. And through that work, we developed a shared interest in female Indigenous leadership approaches. And so it was through this that we were able to set up these visits and really embrace the opportunity of a fangirl experience to meet all the people that we'd been reading about for many, many months prior. Like Verna Kirkness, who celebrated her 90th birthday while we were at the conference, one of the key speakers, and Marie Batiste, to be able to sit in conversation and dialogue with those individuals was truly a heartwarming opportunity for me. It also led us to this opportunity to meet and connect with some amazing female Indigenous leaders within community. So the connection actually began in Winnipeg during the Inspire conference when Hannah Karoapa and Laura Hawkworth attended and spoke about their leadership and experiences in New Zealand. And they generously welcomed us to visit their schools and invited us to experience education within Maori immersion settings, both rural and urban, as well as learning spaces grounded in non-colonial contexts. So I was grateful to be able to invite the team to join us in these visits and was truly staggered by the warm hospitality that they welcomed within each of our settings. Our first visit was to Hanate's Rural Immersion School, and as many others have said, we were welcomed in that first picture with the haka, and I will swear that it was because of my extreme fatigue, having been picked up at the airport at 6 a.m. after an all-night flight to visit schools, but I was immediately overcome with tears at the emotion that the students demonstrated and the profound experience in ways that we hadn't necessarily expected in spaces where language was so prevalent. The emotion really came from witnessing such deep pride, belonging, and cultural strength. Throughout the day, we saw how the infrastructure itself supported connection to the land, large open walls framing the mountains and countryside, learning spaces that invited the land inside. Community members, as Kelsey talked about, from newborns to elders, moved naturally throughout the school. Language was alive. Students of all ages speaking Maori with confidence and pride. Hanate spoke about the deep relationships students and staff have with the land. Every day, students spend time on that mountain and that picture right there, learning from it, gathering medicines, engaging physically, and building responsibility to place. The photos is actually one of my favorites that I took in New Zealand. It shows students at recess gathered around a tree. Can you imagine that background as we go out onto recess? That became the foundation for play. And Hanate talked about that the students would often go into classrooms and haul out tables and chairs to build experiences around that tree and to be playful and connected to the land. And if you look closely, although it's really hard to see in that picture, you'll see a student holding a baby, one of the staff members' children. That image captures what we witnessed throughout this visit. Education rooted in land, language, and community, where learning, leadership, and care are deeply interconnected.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for a
It's like an I Spy.
Yeah.
Our second visit brought us into an urban Maori immersion led by Laura Hawkworth as principal. Once again, we were welcomed with incredible generosity. We were already full from that first visit, but every place we visited had food on offer and a feast to engage in. And so we definitely did not leave any of our school visits hungry. We were welcomed again with the traditional haka and through stories shared openly by students, staff, and community members about the school's origins and purpose. What stood out immediately was the language nests that were founded by the community. Families and community leaders spoke with us about how these nests emerged from a collective commitment to language revitalization and cultural survival. We had the opportunity to speak informally with some of the families who shared both the barriers and the successes they encountered in developing language nests and immersion pathways within an urban context. And one of the teachers had actually gone to school in that setting, in that school, and had come full circle to come back and be a teacher. Although she said she fought it every step of the way, like we know many teachers have fought that, especially when it's been in their own family. But she came back to realizing that that was such an important thing for her family and community to be able to sustain that language. One important feature we observed was how language learning is carefully structured. Students are immersed fully in Maori in early years, and we were shown the dedicated language spaces where students began learning English in grade 4. So they had actual separate buildings where they would engage in English language learning. A deliberate community-driven decision that prioritizes language, strength, identity, and confidence first, and not until that later age of grade 4. The visit reinforced that whether in rural or urban settings, non-colonial education systems grounded in language, land, and community leadership are both possible and powerful, and that sustained commitment over time makes a difference. And so in juxtaposition to the more formal models of education, it was important for our guides to create opportunities for us to learn about Maori history in traditional ways. One of the most powerful learnings from this experience came from being taught on the land outside of colonial structures of education. Brad Totorua guided us through places where history is not distant or abstract, it is held in the ground beneath your feet. As we walked the land, we followed the path of Maori people, colonization, not through dates and documents, but through story, place, and presence. We walked among carefully marked gravestones honoring British soldiers, names, dates, individual recognition. And then just steps away, just inside that archway, we stood before a mound of earth where Maori soldiers were buried together in mass graves. The contrast was devastating. It made the realities of racism, power, and colonization undeniable, not as history, but as lived truth. We also walked through replica trenches, you can see those on the right-hand side, that were built through significant financial commitments of government and community partners to educate students and communities about New Zealand's history, about the battles against colonization, the lives lost, and the systems that created deep inequities that continue to impact Maori people today. What mattered most, though, was this learning held both truth and resilience. While it confronted the brutality of colonial history, it also highlighted how far Maori communities have come and how land-based Indigenous-led education plays a critical role in truth-telling, healing, and collective responsibility. This experience reinforced for us that understanding history, especially Indigenous, requires being grounded in land, relationships, and lived experiences. I also had the pleasure of presenting alongside my colleague Isadine Hawamda for this session. Isadine Hawamda is also an anti-racist education professional learning coordinator. This session highlighted the work of the anti-racist, anti-oppressive education professional learning collaboration within LRSD, WSD, River East Transcona School Division, and our partners at CEDA and Equity Matters, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Together, this collaboration centers storytelling as a leadership practice, recognizing that stories surface truths about systems, power, and lived experiences that data alone cannot. By positioning school leaders as listeners and story holders, the work challenges colonial and deficit-based approaches to leadership and creates space for Indigenous and racialized voices to guide change. The collaboration recognizes the distinctness of Indigenous education and anti-racism education, but allows pathways for them to work alongside one another in parallel. This collaboration intentionally prioritizes cross-divisional partnerships and shared learning as a way to build collective capacity rather than isolated initiatives. By bringing together leaders from multiple school divisions and community partners, the work creates sustained opportunities for school leaders to deepen their practice in anti-racism and anti-oppressive leadership approaches while learning alongside one another. It supports the development of diverse leadership teams within schools, strengthens professional autonomy, ensures that learning is not theoretical, but embedded directly into leadership practice, professional learning, and classroom experience, creating conditions for lasting system-level change. And so we were able to share that experience as one that is unique in that many of the people that we spoke to, and when we say packed rooms, we're talking over 100 people in those spaces alongside us. Many people were unfamiliar with the opportunity to work alongside community and public education systems. And so it was a unique opportunity for us to talk about how we have that opportunity in the work that we're doing in LRSD and other divisions. So the learning that had direct impact on how we understand our leadership responsibilities in LRSD. So first, WIPCE reinforced the power of representation in leadership. Seeing Indigenous women and Maori educators in visible respected leadership roles affirmed how critical representation, not only for students, but for leaders doing equity and systems level work. This reinforces the work that we are doing in LRSD related to equitable hiring practices. And I was humbled to be able to be alongside so many female leaders in the work that we are doing in this, alongside this conference, but also in L'Oreal. The experience also challenged us to engage in critical reflection beyond confirmation bias. Rather than seeking affirmation of what we have already believed, we're encouraged to sit with discomfort, ask hard questions, and examine how systems, intentionally or not, continue to produce inequitable outcomes. We were able to do this because of the vulnerability in relationships that were formed and community in a short period of time. And I know Corey talked about 3,800 participants engaging in this conference. Almost entirely Indigenous folks participate in this. And for those people who haven't had the opportunity to engage in a space of almost entirely Indigenous leaders in education, it's a really humbling experience when we think about the challenges that we have within Canada for representation in education for Indigenous folks. So to be able to create those connections in such a way was truly moving and humbling for all of us. A key takeaway was recognizing the interconnectedness of Indigenous education and anti-racism education. These are not separate areas of work, but run in parallel. This learning deepened our understanding that we must continue along the path of disrupting systemic barriers and upholding Indigenous rights and ways of knowing, as well as for all marginalized communities within public education. For me, it has given me permission to continue learning about my own identity and bringing my learning into the work. Most recently incorporating the framework of the Métis Kitchen Table into anti-racism learning to disrupt the more formal systems and structures. Finally, the experience reinforced that wellness is a leadership responsibility. Sustaining this work requires care, balance, and relational accountability. Anti-racism and Indigenous education are long-term commitments, and effective leadership depends on our ability to remain grounded, reflective, and resilient over time while providing the necessary mentorship and support for those on this journey. Thank you for the opportunity to engage in learning.
I'm next. So at WIPCE, Corey and I shared system level evidence and LRSD. Not to assign blame, but to name responsibility. When gaps persist, those are our gaps over there. Across socioeconomic status, the issue isn't students, it's how systems are designed. Decolonizing a school system, as we framed it, is not ideological. It is existential, practical. Redesigning conditions so students experience belonging, well-being, and high expectations together. Next slide. What WIPCE clarified for me is that history isn't something successful systems move past. It's something they design from. From all the stories my colleagues have shared, we see that belonging, language, and well-being come before academic success. They are not supports layered on when students struggle. They are the conditions that make learning possible. And this work only succeeds when systems take a long view. Equity isn't achieved through short-term initiatives, but through sustained stewardship, which is very much the spirit of the Maori proverb, kia whaka tomuri te ha e rea whaka mua. We walk backwards into the future with our eyes fixed on the past. Next slide. What we're bringing back is not a new direction. It's confidence and clarity. WIPCE affirmed that the path this board has set through our strategic plan, our commitment to the calls to action, our desire to live treaty commitments is the right one. It also sharpened our understanding that equity requires intentional system design and a long view of responsibility. Again, in that sense, the Maori saying, we walk backwards into the future with our eyes fixed on the past, is a saying that serves both as leadership and governance stance. Next slide. Click again. So I want to close by thanking this board for its trust and stewardship. What you've seen and heard this evening reflects commitments that have been made over time through 2 iterations of a strategic plan. And it's going to take a whole lot more iterations to achieve. The work exists because of sustained governance, not moment-to-moment decision. I want to acknowledge the team, not just for their presentation this evening, but for how intentionally they approached this experience, carrying LRSD into a special place with humility, listening carefully, and taking seriously the responsibility to bring learning back in a way that strengthens our community. So what WIPCE reinforced is that strong public systems don't chase novelty. They practice stewardship. They stay grounded in purpose, take the long view, and protect the conditions that allow belonging, well-being, learning to endure for everyone. And so the work ahead is about sustaining and deepening what we already have in place. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And thank you very much for joining us this evening and sharing your individual and collective journeys, the work, what you've brought back that is only going to make LRSD a better place for students and for staff in our community. We've been looking forward to hearing from you. So I want to open the floor for questions from trustees. And we've got folks online too. See hands coming up. Lots of processing going on. Trustee Walker.
I don't have any question. Thank you for the presentation. It's very powerful. It was evident to me that there was a lot of deep learning and reciprocity between you folks that you were learning with. I see lots of value in the work that you're doing, that you're going to continue to do. Thank our leadership for allowing them to do this. I don't have anything else to add to it. It was just an amazing presentation. It was moving for me and I wasn't even there, so just imagine what it was.
Trustee Palmquist and then Trustee Bjornson.
Thank you. I had a quick question about the language nest model. Was that very focused on like school age children or inclusive of like very young children, like preschool age or both?
Yeah, the language nests are primarily like they start with a preschool.
Right.
So it's with the babies. It's with like right as they are born, few months old, that the elders are speaking to them every single day in the language. And then the way that school was structured, or the language nest is structured, is that they had different like pods and they had different areas where a lot of the older kids could continue that learning journey. But a lot of them did start right at the preschool.
Yeah, good to see so many familiar faces. As a teacher, if I went to ED, it was always, is it informing? Is it affirming? Is it transforming? And will I be able to use it in the classroom? Presentations, I think, I want to thank you for that, the energy and the enthusiasm and the joy that you brought to the presentation. I see the nucleus of a good organizational committee to bring the conference here to Winnipeg in years. With that energy and enthusiasm, you're taking into your classroom what that means for our students. Thank you. Courtney, I won't tell your husband.
Any other questions? Trustee Sigurdsson.
Again, it's not really a question. Don't take the fact that I have a million questions as a mark of disrespect. I'm just in awe at overawed by all of you and the experience that you were kind enough to bring back to us. And I know all of you personally and the work that you do here for us. And I'm always impressed by that. And I'm more impressed now that you've done this journey. And I'm sure that the experiences and knowledge that you bring back will be very valuable to us in the future. As Christian said, I've been on the board 15 years now, and I think one of the major things that I can point to looking back is the growth of the Indigenous language, Indigenous learning. When I started, there was almost none, and now it's becoming a very important part of our school system and curriculum, not just for Indigenous students, but for all of our students. And I think that's so valuable and so important. And the work that you do to bring that forward is amazing, and don't ever feel that you're not appreciated.
Is there a question online?
Guys, no question, just a comment as well. Thank you for the presentation, and I think it's this type of work where we're not just demonstrating leadership in this space, but also bringing something that reinforces our division's commitment to strategic strategic priority 1.4 and 1.5, and that the work that we're doing is important, and there's an impact here at home, but we also have an opportunity to have an impact globally. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and we'll continue to support this work. At least I will. Thank you.
Trustee Turner, go ahead.
Thank you. I not a question. That was amazing. Very emotional. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing. And thank you for bringing that wonderful presentation to us. It was money well spent, I believe. Thank you.
I will wrap up again by saying thank you for carving time out of your evening to share with us. You've made us all exceptionally proud, and obviously shone brightly on the world stage, not only in terms of learning that's only going to strengthen Louis Riel, but also sharing with the world the amazing things that we are doing here and that you are leading. And I look at 5 very courageous, empowered, and brilliant women, and that kind of just makes my heart grow and feel warm too. And of course, yeah, Corey, you're great. It's great, but but you started it, right? It was mentioned there a few times, and I think that's in 2026. We need to shine a light on that. So wishing you a good evening. You're welcome to stay if you want. We've got a few more things on our agenda, including another presentation that we've been looking forward to, but I know you've had a long day. So as you were, and be well. Thank you, Big Rich. All right. Just want to make sure that I'm going to school lean over the agenda. Okay, item 4.2 is also a delegation that we've been looking forward to hearing from. Welcome, all of you folks in the red shirts, and we invite you to carry on. The podium is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Colette Panko. I'm the parent of a child who attended school in the LRSD for 6 years, and I'm hopeful she will attend again in high school. While I'm speaking to you from my own experience, I also speak for families who have also struggled to get their children the help that they need, some of whom are here today. I consider myself to be lucky. I have support from my found community. I have the ability to advocate, to navigate the system, and the financial means to pay for extra supports for my daughter. I know that many other families within the division cannot. The next slide, please. Most of us in the room are aware of 2 recent developments in furthering literacy education in Manitoba schools. The first one of these was the Manitoba Human Rights Commission report that was released in October of 2025. The report notes that reading difficulties can be supported and in many cases prevented with evidence-based curriculum and instruction, universal early screening to identify who may be at risk for difficulties, early evidence-based interventions, as well as timely and effective assessments and accommodations for learners who require them. The second, on the very heels of this report, was the NDP government passing of Bill 225, which requires schools to conduct evidence-based screening twice annually for 3 years in a row between kindergarten and grade 4. And the recommendation is to use evidence-based, reliable, valid, and predictive screening tools. Next slide, please. The LRSD leadership has placed itself at the very forefront of adopting recommendations and implementing change amongst provincial school divisions. These images are from the divisional website. They attest to how the division aligns itself in support of Bill 225 in their strategic plan and their policy process document. From my conversations with other parents in other school divisions, I understand that this is actually a minority position amongst school divisions. Next slide. And while strong divisional leadership is essential to systemic change, I'm also here today to highlight some of the barriers that continue to exist for children and families within the division and how you, as the Board of Trustees, can help to dismantle those barriers. Next slide. So the challenge number 1 is sharing the evidence. Mr. Cadet had identified that he and other divisional leadership are working on ways to convey the results of assessments to families. So this would be the assessments for the screening that will be implemented. It is hoped that you, the trustees, will also be able to access this data in order to measure the results. Next slide, please. The Manitoba School Board Association has voiced support for evidence-based literacy instruction. The resolution urging faculties of education to provide structured literacy training for teacher candidates is an important step, but resources and support are needed for the many current teachers who didn't receive this training in university. Providing existing teachers with a supportive environment and adequate tools to implement evidence-based instruction is key. Bill 225 rightly targets new learners within the division in K-4. However, we can't overlook the fact that there are many learners outside of this demographic who continue to struggle with literacy within the division. These students also need support. There are currently pilot initiatives that I know of in Varennes and in Glen Lawn schools that are focused on Tier 2 or small group instruction, which is designed to further support students who require additional support. We want these initiatives to be also evidence-based, standardized, and more widely available across schools. Next slide, please. The current implementation model for these reading initiatives requires the principals of LRSD schools to enact divisional priorities. Accountability and feedback is key. Unfortunately, these top-down measures can run the risk of losing momentum as they filter down to the classrooms. The experiences of my own daughter as an LRSD student attests to how day-to-day classroom experiences of individual students can and do remain quite removed from the policy framework if there are not development of more robust conduits that flow in both directions. Resources are required to develop and support feedback and accountability measures so that the priorities identified at the highest levels don't get lost by the time they get to the classroom. Next slide. Well, much has been done to forward a positive literacy agenda in the LRSD. Now is the time to direct resources that will further enhance your leadership priorities. Next slide. Failure to act or implementing half measures comes at a very high cost. Students who grow up with inadequate literacy skills experience higher unemployment, mental health challenges, and are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. When children don't learn to read, the consequences can last a lifetime, limiting education, employment, and participation in society. Next slide. Trustees, you play a vital role. You set the direction. You help determine the priorities. You ensure that resources flow to what matters most. Tonight, we are asking you to strengthen your division's commitment to literacy. And on behalf of families across this division, thank you for listening and thank you for taking this seriously.
Thanks, Colette, for being here tonight and for representing your group. so wonderfully. It's most appreciated. I just wanted to open the floor for questions from my colleagues. Trustee Walker.
I don't have any questions, but wanted to thank you folks for the work that you did. I was trained as a reading recovery teacher many years ago, and I'm on my own journey in my grade 1-2 classroom to teach structured literacy, and I'm seeing really great results. Excited to have evidence-based tools to use next year to inform my parents about it, and I struggled as a parent too. I had my youngest child was in kindergarten when the pandemic hit. We got great support from the division, but I could tell he was struggling to read, and I was using all the wrong tools to try and support him, and it was the most frustrating experience of my life. So I'm just so pleased that Bill 225 passed. I have so much gratitude for the work that this school division has been doing. When I showed up here, I didn't realize how much leadership was already happening here. I learned so much in the last 2 years, and I'm just really proud to be part of the board here and all the good work that's happening. And I can assure you that I will be a strong advocate for evidence-based instruction in this division. Now, I also note that I ran into a couple of my kids when I was at the board office last week, and they were doing some professional development around best practice. One of them was, came out to, glow about my youngest, to tell me how well he's doing. So it's all around a great story to tell. And we'll keep at it until we get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does your presentation, is it possible to send Ron a copy that can then get routed to the rest of us? You had some good points and I couldn't keep up, so
Sure.
so
Yeah,
that
for
way
sure.
I wanted to listen instead of record, so that way at least we
Yep.
captured, we can attach it to this agenda item. We use it as
Certainly, yeah.
reference
Mhm.
for further conversations, but I appreciate it. Another question? Sorry, Trustee Palmquist, go ahead.
Quick, as a fellow VADA parent, just wanted to thank you for your ongoing advocacy past the future that I've heard and seen a lot of, both in the media and person, and of course here at the table. Thank you.
Trustee Sigurdsson?
And again, thank you again for your hard work. We all know that being able to read and write is really fundamental to being able to education. It's one of the keystones, but my ignorance is the wrong word, but lack of knowledge in this, but maybe you can clarify the tier 1 and tier 2. What is the meaning behind that?
My understanding of a tier 1 instruction would be the instruction that would be provided to all students as just kind of integrated in their regular learning. Tier 2 would be a more specialized small group instruction, where smaller groups of students who have been identified as requiring additional supports can access. And then, tier 3 would be even more intense.
So it's just identifying children who need more help and making sure they get that help.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Thank you again. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I hope the drive home isn't too treacherous, but I mean, you're welcome to stay. But in the end, we appreciate that you've carved time out of your evening to be here. Appreciate your advocacy.
Thank you.
Trustees, we move to board education. Just one item here. For anybody who's interested, the Manitoba School Boards Association has partnered with the Relations Commission to offer a workshop towards the end of April on treaty education. So it's one day, it's online, there's no charge. The link is within that agenda item. So if you're interested in taking part, please register. And then perhaps you can bring us back a short report on what you gleaned. Item 6 is finance and audit. We turn to the Secretary Treasurer for item 6.1.
Thanks very much. Last Tuesday, we had a special board meeting where the 2026-2027 budget was passed. And so I just want to direct the public to our website, in which we have a couple of spotlight stories, a news release, and an infographic on what those budget highlights are about. And so just to reiterate that for next year, our budget is set at $281,731,342. That marks an increase of a 2.89% budget increase from this current year. This reflects increase in our wage and benefits of a little over $13.6 million or a 5.97% increase, and a corresponding decrease in operating expenditures of 12.58%, a decrease of $5.7 million. This budget reflects what our community has told us that matters most to them, which is class size supports mental health, safety, inclusion, and transparency. It also incorporates careful student-centered decision-making that protects what happens in the classroom. It provides realistic and responsible financial planning, even in a challenging funding environment. It ensures reductions focused on non-classroom areas to respond to calls for greater restraints in administrative budgets, as well as it incorporates long-term thinking guided by LRSD's values and commitment to every student's success. So I welcome the public to go on our website to find out more information. As well, we do have a online calculator to see what the net tax effect is on your property assessment for this current year.
Thank you, trustees. Any questions? Trustee Secretary.
Yes, so the mill rate isn't necessarily what people will pay in taxes, is that correct?
Correct.
And what we really have control over, so the mill rate is just determined as how we get the money that we need.
Correct. It's the rate used to collect.
So it's the, so our spending increase is what we control, or decrease, is obviously increase. And that this year is 2 point.
Our budget increase is 2.89%. And so what you're referring to is our special requirement. And what the special requirement is total dollars the division must raise to essentially make up the difference between the federal, the provincial funding and other sources of revenue and what it's used to balance the budget.
What I was asking is we chose to raise spending by 2.8.
Correct.
Yeah. And how much did we get? What was the increase that we got from the provincial government?
4.6 million.
So our spending increase is less than
what the province has provided. Correct.
Trustee Bjornson.
We had talked about referencing the fact that we have managed to find significant savings through deferral and reductions. I don't actually see that here.
So, but you don't, sorry, I didn't hear that part.
I thought we had talked about the fact that through the budget process, we had identified deferrals and savings, which I think is an important part of discussion. And I think we also talked about the fact that we eliminated the deficit. But I don't see.
Yeah, so in the budget spotlight story, as well as on the infographic, you'll see in the spotlight story, it says here, the budget prioritizes core classroom support while maintaining essential system-wide services and investments in student service, in student learning and well-being. Cost reductions, deferrals, and efficiency were used to arrive at a balanced budget that includes the elimination of the accumulated debt. So it is part of our press release.
Oh, the press release.
And in the infographic.
Yeah, so in the infographic, you'll see that we've laid out what our year-over-year budget change is. And so in the operating this current school year, our operating budget is $45.3 million. We've reduced that to $39.6 million, which is a reduction of $5.7 million. Oh, I can show it, sorry. Yeah, so you'll see it right here. And in addition, we've reduced wages by about $2.1 million. So the wages and benefits from this current year to next school year, while we're showing a difference of $13.6 million or 5.97% increase, it does reflect a reduction of roughly 20 FTE the staff members, equating to about a $2.1 million cost savings.
I'm sorry, what I thought might have been missing though was the actual numbers that were attached to those measures that we had taken, because those are pretty substantial. So where you talk about it in terms of elimination of the accumulated deficit for reductions, deferrals, and efficiencies, numbers are quite substantial. I thought that was going to be part of that reference. In the first part anyway, the first thing that I'm looking at here, I guess from the website. But that's fine. I mean, it says it, but people can relate more to numbers than language, right?
Yeah, we can always improve and enhance how we communicate the realities of the 26-27 budget.
Paula, go ahead. Or sorry, trustee Seminola.
Yeah, no, I just I wanted to say, hey, thanks for all the work that has gone into this. And this meal rate increase to cover this special requirement is about less than 2% increase on the levy, right? Is that what it represents?
Yeah, the special requirement, the increase in the special requirement is 1.31.
Yeah.
It's the total dollars that the school division must raise.
Yeah, which is below what we were limited to in the past. Thank you for confirming that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Right, item 6.2 is a promissory note, first of two. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're receiving two promissory notes from the province for March 31st, 2026. And so the first promissory note is repayment or reimbursement of costs associated with the Gage Friends Collegiate Addition and Renovation Project. And so this reimbursement is for $314,500.
So the motion reads that the issue of the promissory note LTPS 0859 as it is deemed necessary and expedient to raise by loan the sum of $314,500 on the credit of the Louis Riel School Division for the purpose of financing capital projects be approved. I need a mover and seconder, please. Trustee Walker.
No, second.
Second, trustee Simoniola, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And the motion is carried.
And for trustee Simoniola. Trustee Simoniola, do you want to do a verbal?
Trustee Seminola, we need your vote, please, either on the screen or just verbal or hands up emoji, whatever.
Sorry, I was waiting for the thing to renew, but I vote in favor.
Okay, thank you. The second promissory note, as it has been explained, is, the motion is as follows, that the issue of the promissory note LTPS 0862, as it is deemed necessary and expedient to raise by loan the sum of $357,500 on the credit of the Louis Riel School Division for the purpose of financing capital projects be approved. Looking for a mover and seconder, please. Trustee Bjornson and second. Trustee Sigurdsson, thank you. Questions on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6.4 is related to campaign financing for the upcoming election in October and to the Secretary Treasurer on this one.
Thank you very much. And so Bill 39 has been amended in the Public Schools Act. And this is to introduce new campaign financing rules for school trustee elections. Under these rules, candidates must officially file their nomination papers before they can raise or spend any campaign money. Only Manitoba residents are permitted to make contributions, and there are now limits on how much can be donated and spent, along with mandatory record keeping and reporting requirements. Candidates who do not follow these rules may face penalties for non-compliance. To support understanding and compliance, school divisions have been provided with campaign finance guidebooks and a reporting template. The senior election officials are responsible for enforcing those rules in advance of the October 28th, 2026 school trustee election. And an information session for SEOs will be held to provide further guidance. And so that's what these three letters, or the letter, the manual, and the reporting template.
Okay, and these are available on the ministry website or the City of Winnipeg, or both eventually?
Well, we'll definitely make it available on our website, but
Okay.
it should be available on the City of Winnipeg website. There'll be a landing page for candidates or prospective candidates to get their nomination papers as well as this information.
Thanks. Trustees, any questions? All right, that is for information. Staffing to the superintendent.
We are recommending Lisa Timchuk be appointed as the Assistant Director for Clinical Services for next school year. She's, at the moment, she's a clinical supervisor, and we're doing away with the 3 supervisor position, creating this one Assistant Director position. As part of those budgetary measures that we talked about earlier. As a clinical supervisor, she has consistently contributed to key initiatives, playing a pivotal part in transitioning from segregated programs, thinking of individualized programming in our schools to inclusive community schools. Lisa's removed barriers for students and families. She applies evidence-based strategies and designs that are scalable to bring about more equity to the system. She's proactive and solutions-oriented. Lisa's demonstrated some strong values and judgment, making her well-suited for this role.
Thank you very much. So the motion reads that Lisa Timchuk be appointed as clinical director, as the Assistant Director of Clinical Services effective August 1st, 2026. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Trustee Nordheim, second. Trustee Walker, any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed?
So reminded to vote.
Yes.
Vote yes.
Okay, and the motion is carried. We extend congratulations to Lisa in her new role. Item 8, information coming from the senior leadership team. First of all, the leadership team meeting from last week.
Yes, the March leadership meeting with our school leaders continued with their project-based learning work with a strong emphasis on clarifying how improvement efforts connected to this work translate into tangible outcomes for students, staff, and families. So the focus was moving beyond activities to identifying clear evidence of impact and on documenting the learning, growth, and artifacts produced through this work. So come May and June, all of us, senior leaders included, are going to be presenting the work, our learning, and its impact to each other. And time permitting, we may find an opportunity for some to come present to you here at the board, here at a board meeting. Or we might arrange your taking part in a portion of the leadership meeting if my colleagues are comfortable with that. Because that hasn't been a part of the conversation thus far. So we also spent time reviewing the 26-27 budget and its implications for next year. We continued our work on staffing for 26-27, and earlier trustees learned about our staffing efforts earlier this evening. And so all of it, of course, the focus being using our resources effectively, equitably to respond to that student need. So to help with that as well, we continued our learning around understanding classroom complexity. We presented to school leaders three different ways of measuring complexity. We've borrowed from Alberta, borrowed from the healthcare system across the country, and our own ways of measuring, comparing and contrasting those approaches, so that again, we better understand classroom conditions, lived experience, and respond, thinking of a budget and allocating resources, and wanting to see things improve. What we heard from community, from parents, and how we can make that data transparent while respecting privacy and not falling into a deficit mindset. So all of that's in the works. And finally, we did actually spend time on that, the notion of data governance, and with the brave new world AI changing every day, responsible use of AI. So you'll learn more about all of these things over the course of the next 3 months. You'll adopt a data governance charter. You'll adopt AI guidelines. We'll have more to share about that work. We're building guidelines and data governance in the AI that we're personalizing for LRSD. And you'll learn more about, as always, the data that we're making sense of and how we can share that data with the public we serve.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions? Next item then is the Shamrock School envelope project.
Yes, so you at our last meeting wanted to see more about that specific project, so here it is. You have a report, you have timelines, you have 4 files. And just to summarize for folks in the room and online, the Shamrock School Building Envelope Project is provincially funded. It's a capital renewal project. Its aim is to replace the school's aging exterior walls, windows, doors, and insulation. All systems that are at the end of their service life. The project's objective, of course, is to improve safety, energy efficiency, and the learning and teaching environment. Construction started in January and will continue through to January 2028. And it's being phased to minimize disruption and staff. The report also shows you that following a competitive tender process, Park West Projects was selected as the lowest compliant bidder. The total project cost is 10.2 million, fully funded by the province.
Questions on this? Okay, item 9, policy. There are some revisions coming to us today related to administrative protocol through the superintendent to Assistant Superintendent Anderson.
Thank you. Trustees, you'll recall receiving as information the customer service standard for accessibility administrative protocol on January 13th. It's returning this evening for information related to 3 edits that have been made. And these are minor edits that are intended to improve the clarity and alignment with provincial action. And these edits have been achieved through partnership with the Manitoba Accessibility Secretariat, who has undertaken a comprehensive review of the admin protocol and recommend changes.
Thank you. Any questions on this one? All right. Correspondence. We have record of correspondence that was received by the board, correspondence that the board sent, And then some information that has come from the Manitoba School Boards Association, specifically related to some executive highlights and the treaty workshop that was referenced earlier. Are there any questions on any of this? All right, we have no action items tonight, so that takes us to public question period. And we would welcome questions on items on today's agenda. I'm going to start with anybody online. Any hands raised? No? Folks in the room, if you would introduce yourself and offer your question.
My name is Sire Ellens and I have two questions relating to the budget.
Sure.
In the parent meeting that we had, there was an identification of the budget at 281,046,200. In the press release, that changed 281,731,342. Can you speak to the increase?
What was the parent meeting? The parent meeting?
Parent meeting says 281,046,200.
A parent meeting that you had in your
The
school?
budget meeting.
Oh, the budget
Invited
meeting that was
everybody.
here.
So 281,046,200 was. It identified wages and budget at 239, 384,688, supplies and services 39,310, and building an envelope or building and equipment 251. In this press release that's online, there's a $680,000 increase. Wondering where that went or where that came from.
Yeah, so after the community consultation meeting, we get additional information, whether additional funding or change in cost estimates, as well as different deliberations as to assumptions. And so when we took all that into consideration, that kind of was the difference that came out of those discussions. So there was increases in our change in assumptions in wages, benefits, and so we made corresponding changes to offset the increases in wages and benefits on the operating side.
It's a bit of a change. My second question also relates to budget, and sending 7 people or potentially more to New Zealand was quite an opportunity for the teachers and the education. Can you confirm the total budget spent on the travel and whether you were in a deficit?
We did approve it. There is budget money there's money in the budget every year that can be used for professional development, and that is at the superintendent's discretion. I can confirm that there had been money not spent in previous years specifically to be able to fund this opportunity, which became more important and more of an opportunity when we had several people invited to present sessions.
You confirm or no?
Believe it was 58,000 for everybody to go, all in, everything in.
An average spend for non-union and unionized employees to give a $1,000 PD allowance?
Well, again, it's money that we put aside in our budget because we believe professional development and learning and also sharing what we're doing. And we trust the superintendent to disperse that money in ways that are going to most benefit the people that work and learn in it.
I understand, but in a unionized environment, once you give towards a certain allocation, you probably will expect that same agreement.
Anyone else have questions? Anna?
Okay. One's related to the budget and one's related to the presentation, one of the presentations we had this evening. Just a quick question on I know I saw in the, maybe it was a press release or what was on the website, that infrastructure improvements were deferred, unfortunately, and I think, if you recall, at the budget consultation, I was strongly advocating for air conditioning all in, let's get her done this year. Is it my understanding that there are no air conditioning retrofits planned for this 26-27 year? Is that what you meant by all deferral?
No, the plan that we had in place that we established last year to do them in rotation over the next, 10 years.
It was 6 years.
6 years,
Yeah, okay.
that was not touched. That plan is still in place and that is our intent.
Well, it was, and that we're not going to spend as much as we initially thought. So So we're going to spend less. We're in a different school as a result.
Yeah.
So may I ask, is it, is it 1 or 2 schools? How many facilities are?
It'll be one school
One school
and
for
it'll be
26.
at half the cost that we suggested when we talked draft budget.
Well, that's unfortunate. So now we're, in all likelihood, we're, the 6-year plan, it's going to be bumped out in all likelihood to a 10-year plan. I certainly hope change, no? Hope so.
Just doing one school a year.
Yeah.
Different one this year, sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
Okay, so only one was planned for 26, 27 on the plan anyways.
My understanding.
Yep. it was
Okay.
one school.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
difference?
So then, I'd like to, I was very fascinated with this whole literacy presentation. And this is just a side note, because I know there was a motion a month or so back and there's gonna be a little bit more, I believe your question period at the end, and there's one gonna be at the beginning, is that correct? That's coming soon?
That's the
That was-
intent.
That was the intent. So I just wanna, before I ask my question, just share my observation. So both of these delegations were very interesting, but unfortunately, only the trustees were allowed to ask questions. And most of your delegations leave, don't remain for the rest of the meeting. So I hope when you're looking at implementing these changes, you might also consider just adding, if there is a delegation presenting, to at that moment, give the public, after the trustees have the opportunity to ask questions. Because it's a lost opportunity. They've left. Both delegations have left. And myself or anyone online is not given the opportunity. And they go to a lot of trouble to make these presentations.
Okay.
Anyhow, so my observation on the literacy one, and so what, if I'm understanding correctly, sort of these early years and these K1, 2, 3, there's gonna be the universal screening that the province is rolling out. So those early years are really critical for establishing a foundation for reading. And it struck me today as I was listening to this. I believe our French immersion program, the ELA is not introduced until grade 2. So I would encourage the board, as much as that's sort of our curriculum or our protocol, our French immersion program invites both Francophone and non-Francophone students. So I'm thinking, and I know it's meant to be immersive, but my question is, are those students going to be at a disadvantage because ELA is not introduced to grade 2? I think Irene, pardon me, Trustee Nordheim, a meeting or two ago, you had visited a kindergarten school and you were quite blown away with their ability to read at so early. So what I think of now that we have introduced full-time K, right? All of K, all of 1, that's 2 full years before, if you're an FI student, before ELA is introduced. And so I'm gonna ask the board to give some thought to that, because as we have an obligation for our FA students to all embrace English and French.
I just wanna understand what your question is.
Okay, well, my question is, will the board examine, revisit perhaps these new universal screening laws, how that might interact with our. Does that
So
make
the
sense?
universal screening occurs in both official languages, not just English. And what we know from the policy of having English start in grade 2 in French immersion, a policy I was a part of developing way back when, 2006, where I advocated it start in grade 4. Like we heard from the presentation this evening, and what I know from studying language acquisition across Canada and the world since the 80s. We're talking about a language that isn't the language of the majority, and we're talking about immersive environments to learn language, to acquire language. Actually, the longer you delay the language of the majority, the more you have students successfully integrate both languages and become proficient in both languages, or however many languages we're talking about. It's also what I'm advocating for is that we should be thinking of a plurilingual world, not a bilingual. But children have this amazing ability to learn many languages, and the faster, the sooner we as a society, as a community, embrace plurilingualism, multilingualism, and create the environments for that flourishing, the better. So, I loop back. Testing occurs in both languages. French immersion schools are not designed for francophones as defined under Article 23 of the Constitution. They're designed for everyone else who believes they're francophone, but not that definition in the Constitution. We have a DSFM.
Right.
For those,
But the way
for
we
those
structure
folks.
our program is we are, it's almost in somewhat 15 out of 30 credit hours is all that is required for an FI grade 12 diploma.
So,
Right,
I
and
believe
in LRSD, it's not that. It's
over 26,
that's right.
I believe.
Which is why we are the model for French immersion in Manitoba and inspire policy changes like moving from 14 to 15 credits. Slow but steady.
I guess all I'm saying is as an English mother, had I sent my child to French immersion, and let me just, quick story.
So Ina,
Yeah.
we've kind of moved away from your question about the agenda item, but you can have the
No, but
conversation.
but just to back to your question, if I had concern, if the board had concerns about language acquisition for children in immersion, we'd change the approach, but the data tells us
So then
the approach is working.
universal screening, that data will become very important.
Absolutely, and it's already present. So back to the screen, we already have them in place. So we're not waiting on the province to come up with the screeners. The screeners are in place.
I'd
Ron?
like to speak to that. So we work very closely with the top researchers in this field who have a very strong focus in French immersion. They're at the University of Toronto and at McGill University. And they are actually developing tools for us for French immersion because the tools currently don't exist. There are no evidence-based tools in French immersion. And so we are using them. They are actually vetting them as we speak. And in the same time, we are also using English tools based on the research that we already know can be highly predictive of future reading challenges for students. And so we are able to use those tools that are well represented in the research, and we use them for all of our students when they enter into kindergarten in all of our programs in the English and French immersion. And as a safety measure, we also have them continuing in kindergarten at the end of the year and again in the middle of grade 1. These are highly reliable resources that really are good for predicting future reading challenges and allowing us to redirect resources in order to support the learning. At the same time, we are measuring the progress with the French tools that have been developed for us and that are now being used in jurisdictions across the province and the country. And they are continuing to elaborate more and more of these tools for our programming because we were able to provide an environment where these tools can be used effectively and a team that is well supported and well informed on how to implement them in the classroom and support it with instructional practices that match and align with the research. We are then able to really have confidence in the results that we get in both programs in French immersion and in English.
Trustee Palmquist.
I would just like to add an additional comment coming from my personal experience as an English speaker parent, who is also the parent of 3 first language French children. The English language acquisition experience of children in our culture, in our world, they may be in a explicitly French program or a French immersion program, but the English immersion they experience is the whole world around them. It's every street sign, it's every trip to McDonald's, it's every single person you meet in the community, every half-heard conversation you at the shopping mall. It's everything and everywhere. And the English language acquisition in this part of Canada is essentially virtually automatic. For even people who go out of their way, as my family does, to try to explicitly expose our children to just the French language, their English language grows along with it in tandem. And with respect, so I'm not going to speak specifically to the screening element of that, and Ron articulated well, but there is no concern that I'm aware of any problems with English language acquisition in this part of the world in our society for youth involved in any kind of French focused educational programming.
as a parent would have been concerned if it would have been waited till grade 2 before my child was exposed to reading. I'll share a quick experience. Chris,
Ina, I'll let you continue the conversation afterwards. Trustee Walker had his hand up and then we had another question. But I need a motion for us to extend our question period to the 15 minutes. So I need a motion to extend question period. Trustee Walker, second. Trustee Bjornson, all in favor? Thank you very much. Trustee Walker and then our guest. Sorry?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
I won't take long. I just wanted to give a vote of confidence for the work that our leaders here have done. When I was elected 2 years ago, I didn't really know what was going on in the school division. I didn't really understand how my own practices in the classroom were impacting my students and the foundation of their literacy work. And I have learned a tremendous amount as a professional being here. And I know that this division has led in universal screening. We are very fortunate to have Ron here and all of the other folks that Ron works with doing that work. So I just wanted to publicly state that I have the utmost confidence in the work that they're doing. And I trust them. My own 2 children are in French immersion. And one has struggled in reading. And as I mentioned, I saw his teacher doing professional development just last Friday. And anyways, I'll leave it at that. But thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Legman. Thank you for letting me ask my question. I wasn't planning this, but our kids, we have 2 kids, K-8 at Culverens, and now the oldest one's in grade 12 at CJS, and the youngest one's in grade 9 at CJS. So one excels academically, one struggles a bit more. We had a late dyslexia diagnosis for one of our children in high school, and that has been a learning curve. So my question is, does the division currently allocate funding for high school resources and aid for students with dyslexia? If not, would that be something that could be put on the table? And as a quick side note, the high school is excited for bilingual assistance with this. I can't remember the terms used, but great to hear it's coming.
Like Ron to
Sure. So high schools are on a journey. And obviously, this starts with early literacy. K-2 is where the focus begins, and the early reading and trying to support students as they're developing into readers. That has led us into building structures and resources and approaches that are more effective for instruction and intervention in middle years as well. And many high schools have begun the journey now as to try and understand the strengths and needs of their students and provide necessary supports that are aligned with the research. And so as that journey continues, they're simply building upon what all of those other levels have done. And so when we see students entering high school, we go back to the same approaches for the younger students, understanding that literacy is built up on several pillars. If you think about it as a physical structure, you'll have pillars, and then they're holding up a roof is how it was described at one of the sessions I attended. And if there's any cracks in those pillars, the roof becomes unstable, and the cracks typically come at the earliest stages. And so once we know exactly where to begin the interventions, where the skills were not mastered at those foundational level, teachers can then intervene in a way that works. The challenge is that we have to develop teacher knowledge in these areas and provide the resources. So today, for example, we had over 100 student services teachers covering all grades, doing some professional development with resources that we've implemented in schools or are beginning to implement now. Some high school representation may be there, but it may not be fully represented across all the high schools yet. We are working towards that. It is a journey, but there are certainly examples where this is much more implemented across the division than others, but we're trying to bring consistency to all the grade levels.
Thank you and welcome. All right, we are adjourned at 9:02. Thank you.